Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Montclair Planning Board. Excuse me. Notice has been given with regard to this meeting by providing a copy of the notice on the first floor of this building, by posting it on the township website, and also by sending a copy to the newspapers designated by the township for notice. This meeting is being broadcast live on Channel 34 and is being streamed live and will be available on demand on YouTube. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding, meaning that the board has powers and procedures that resemble a court of law, and that in order to provide the basis of official action, we must objectively determine facts and draw conclusions therefrom. Any questions or comments that the board hears tonight should be limited to those that the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate for a judicial proceeding should be maintained at all times. First thing on our agenda is our roll call.
Mr. Borshaw?
Here.
Vice Chair Brodock?
I'm here.
Mr. Campbell?
He's here.
Mr. Graham?
Here.
Mr. Ortiz is not here. Mr. Pierre?
Present.
Counselor Terry is excused. Ms. Willis?
Here.
Chair Nguyen?
Here.
Mr. Jacobson?
Here.
And Mr. Neiman.
Here.
We also have Chuck Ribaldi, who's here on behalf of Arthur Neese.
Thank you.
Did I pronounce your last name?
Close.
Ribaldo?
Ribaldi.
Ribaldi.
Like Stromboli.
I can't read my own name.
Next on our agenda, we have our minutes from March 25th.
I received changes to the minutes from Vice Chair Brodock. Are there any other changes? Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
You can.
Abstentions? Okay.
All right, and that brings us to our business this evening with the 133, 135 Valley Road Kush Connection site plan.
And Mr. Trembulac, I think I probably need to number the exhibits before you get, once you get started, I'll need to renumber them. I'm ready, if you're ready.
I'm ready. We're ready.
I'm starting with the affidavit of service for the site plan at A12. It's essentially the same application as previous, so we're up to A12. It's
Okay.
affidavit of service. A13 is the proof of publication. A14 is the survey for 133 Valley Road, prepared by Richard Hingos, dated February 14th, 2024. A15 is the site plan prepared by Sionis Architecture, revised March 15th, 2024. A16th is the planning report dated March 19th, 2024. A17 is the board engineer report dated March 24th, 2024. A18 is the letter from Sionis Architecture discussing the changes. A19 is the revised site plan from Sionis Architecture, revised April 5th, 2024. A20 is the planning report dated April 11th, 2024. And A21 is the board engineer report dated April 14th, 2024. I think that brings us up to date with all the documents.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. Alan Trembulac appearing this evening on behalf of Kush Connection LLC. This is an application for site plan approval for a property located at 135 Valley Road, which is in the NC Neighborhood Commercial Zone District. Kush Connection has applied for and obtained from the township as well as from the state of New Jersey the appropriate licenses to operate a retail cannabis dispensary at this location on Valley Road. As most of you will recall, we were here a couple of months ago in February, at which time we basically bifurcated this application and asked the board to grant conditional use approval for this application, and the board did in fact grant that approval. And at that time, we indicated to the board that we would return here for site plan approval, and that's what brings us here this evening. In addition to site plan approval, we need, I think, 3 C variances, a parking deficiency variance. 13 spaces are required for this use. We're providing 4 spaces in the rear of the property. We're providing an EV charging station, which, as you know, counts as 1 additional space. And we're also proposing to provide 3 additional parking spaces on the adjacent property at 133 Valley Road, which happens to be in common ownership with this property. We also need a variance to exceed the permissible impervious coverage, and we need some variances for parking area setbacks, which don't meet the 4-foot requirement. I should note, because I think it's important, Kush Connection is not the owner of this property or the owner of the adjacent property at 133 Valley Road. Kush Connection will be a tenant at this property pursuant to a lease agreement with the property owner. And if you've had a chance to review the proposed site plan that we've presented, you'll see we're dealing with a property that's very narrow. It's only 30 feet wide. The property has a substandard 8-foot driveway on the left side or the northerly side of the property, and then this small building on the property that takes up the entire 30 feet of frontage. There's a driveway on the other side of the property, which actually is on the neighboring property, which is also, by the way, only a 30-foot lot. So the property presents some significant challenges to provide adequate means of ingress and egress to the rear of the property, which is the only place to provide any on-site parking. And as I indicated, in an effort to provide some additional on-site parking, my client has made arrangements with the owner of the property to utilize the driveway that's on 133 Valley for access to the rear, and also to provide and utilize 3 additional parking spaces in the rear of the adjacent property, again, to provide as much on-site parking as possible. Although you'll hear from my first witness about parking counts that have been done, which I think will demonstrate clearly that there's an abundance of available on-street parking in the adjacent neighborhood. So I have 2 witnesses to present this evening. My first witness sitting to my right is Jake Kushner, who will testify on behalf of the applicant regarding the operations of the cannabis dispensary, as well as some of the matters I've already discussed in my opening comments. And then following his testimony, I have Ryan Robertson from Sionis Architecture, who will review the site plan and discuss the issues relating to that. So unless the board has any preliminary questions for me, I'd ask that Jake Kushner be sworn in. He's going to swear in. No, you can just raise your right hand.
My name is Jacob Kushner. You said spell my last name? Kushner. Yes.
Okay, Jake, why don't you start out by telling us who are the owners of Kush Connection LLC?
The owners of Kush Connection LLC are my parents, Patricia Kushner and Stephen Kushner.
Okay, and they're present this evening, correct?
Yes, they are.
Okay, and what is your position or relationship to Kush Connection?
I manage the company.
Okay. Will you be responsible for overseeing the operation and management of the cannabis dispensary if it's improved,
Yes, sir.
obtain the approval from this board?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And has Kush Connection been issued a license from the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission to operate a retail dispensary at this location?
Yes, sir.
And is the license specific to this location, or is it a general license?
Specific.
Okay, so the license only pertains to this 135 Valley Road, is that
Yes, sir.
correct? Okay. And has Kush Connection also applied for and obtained a local license from the Township of Montclair to operate a dispensary
Yes, sir.
in the town?
Mhm.
Okay, and is that license also specific to this particular location?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Now, talking about the property at 135 Valley Road, which is where you propose to operate the dispensary, correct?
Mhm.
Okay. Who is the owner of that property?
Larry Russamano.
Okay. He actually owns it through a limited liability company, is that correct?
Yes, 135 Valley Road LLC.
Okay.
something like that.
And Mr. Russamano is the principal behind that entity?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And he's the person you've dealt with in
Yes.
negotiating leases and other agreements?
Yes.
Okay. Does he also own, either individually or through another LLC, the adjacent property at 133 Valley Road?
Yes.
Okay. And you have an agreement with Mr. Russamano to lease the property at 135 Valley Road
Yes.
and to be used as a retail cannabis
Yes.
dispensary? Okay. Do you also have and have you also reached agreements with him regarding the adjacent property at 133 Valley Road?
Yes.
Okay. Specifically, what do those agreements pertain to with respect to 133?
So we are allowed, the agreement will allow us to use the driveway, like Alan mentioned, that, is technically for 133. And then as well, it allows us to use the area in the back where we're going to put, the 3 parking spaces.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And has your agreement regarding the use of the driveway and the rear for parking, has that been reduced to writing yet?
No, it's a verbal agreement at the moment.
Okay. You intend to enter into
Yes.
a written agreement formalizing those understandings if this application were to be approved by the board?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay. And just with respect to the parking spaces that will be provided behind 133, what is the basic agreement you have with Mr. Russamano regarding the use of those spaces?
So the way you wanted it done, it will be a renewable contract, renewed yearly. And basically, that will give us the right to use those spots and that general area, the back of that property, as long as we have that agreement in place. essentially.
So it essentially would be, I guess, it hasn't been drafted yet, but I assume it would essentially be a lease
Yes.
to utilize for a one-year term that would be automatically renewable, is that?
Yes.
Okay. And you pay a monthly rent or an annual rent
Monthly.
in
Yeah.
exchange for that?
Yeah, on top of our rent for 135.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, are either of the buildings currently occupied, the buildings at 135 and 133?
No.
They're both vacant?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Tremula?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I really would like a further understanding of how the two buildings are related to each other. As you know, there is that breezeway between the two that connect them. And from my understanding that the reason why it's there is because in order to have a proper exit from the building in which the cannabis is operating on the second floor, that it needed to have an exit through the other building. So it seems to me that they're more than just neighbors. And also the two driveways, they're both very narrow. One is for only coming in and the other is for only going out, right?
That's what we're
So
proposing.
therefore, the people who have the house next door, if they want to come out of their driveway have to use the one. So it seems to me that they're very, very connected, and I would like
Certainly.
some sort of understanding as to exactly how that works.
Well, our next witness, can probably address the issue about the buildings being connected, and the reason for that and whether that needs to be continued. We're not proposing to change that in any way. And our plan is proposing, that the driveway that's on the right side of our property, which is actually the driveway at 133, as you already indicated, would be one way going in, and then the driveway on the north side of the property would be one way going out. And that would be for both people coming to our property as well as anybody going to 133 Valley, if that property is improved and
And also
occupied
the
in future.
emergency exit from your building that will have the cannabis operation from the second level is only through the other building.
So what's the legal relationship between the two premises? What does your client's lease include? Does it include an easement through the other building? I mean, I think that's kind of
Well,
what
what
Ms. Willis wants to understand.
Okay. We haven't finalized the arrangements yet, or memorialized them, but there's an agreement regarding the lease, which would cover the entire property of 135 Valley Road. They would be the sole occupant of the building and the property. And then the understanding is that we will obtain an easement, a permanent easement from Mr. Russomanno to utilize the driveway on 133, and we would in turn grant an easement to 133 to utilize the driveway on the other side to come out of the property.
So, but these easements that you're talking about are all part of a leasehold? All part of a leasehold?
It would be
right?
separate from the lease,
Yeah, how does that work?
Well, it
If
would
they're
be-
only, if one has to be tied to the other, because
Well, they're
any easement
related.
that you're granting is only good for as long as your client has a leasehold interest in the property,
Well,
right?
Not necessarily.
Well,
in this case.
let's have Mr. Tremulak address that.
Again, we haven't finalized those agreements yet, whether it would be permanent or permanent for so long as my client is utilizing 135 for its intended use. But that would be, the easement would have to be a separate document because it would have to be recorded. And we would not ordinarily record the lease and wouldn't want to record the lease. So it would be a separate agreement. And then there would be, again, what's essentially a lease for the 3 parking spaces to be constructed in the rear of 133 Valley. So there's not, I realize, there would be no permanency to that, but it would be year to year, and it would give us some additional parking for some undetermined amount of time.
So I guess the obvious question there, though, is it's year to year, it's not permanent.
It's
So
not
what happens if next year the landlord changes his mind?
Then we wouldn't have those parking spaces.
Then what happens to the operation?
Well,
It shuts down?
No.
No.
See, this is what
Well,
we kind of need to
Well,
understand,
we're
kind of need to understand that.
we were planning to get into that.
Okay.
But I'm happy to discuss it now because it is important.
Well, if you have witnesses, if you have other witnesses that are going to explain that,
Well, we're going to discuss it, but I'll tell you right now, we need, as Janice points out in her memo, we need 13 spaces for 135 Valley. We're proposing 4 spaces and an EV parking space, which is the equivalent of providing 5 parking spaces. Forget the 3 on the adjacent property for now. So we need a variance for 8 parking spaces, okay? You'll hear in a few minutes about the parking counts that my client conducted over a period of time, which will demonstrate, I think, that there's clearly sufficient on-street parking in the immediate neighborhood
10 minutes ago was an abundance, now we're down to sufficient. I've got to keep watching the,
Well,
watching the
actually,
words.
it's an overabundance, Jeff, since you mentioned it. More than sufficient. You know. So, you know, again, we're providing the 3 additional spaces, but we really need a variance for an 8-space parking deficiency, because those 3 spaces, you know, that we're providing on 133 may not be there forever.
Just to clarify, when we say that the EV parking space brings us up to 5, can 5 cars fit simultaneously? That's what I thought.
The EV counts as 2.
That's what I,
State
yeah, I just want to make sure I was
statute-
following. Okay. So we're
State
saying,
statute provides that. If you provide an
Okay.
electric vehicle space, it sort of counts as an
it counts, but we
additional
can, okay.
space.
Thank
So
you for
You
clarifying.
get credit for it, in other words.
Can you also kind of clarify the dependence of the second floor of the building that is the cannabis operation, that its emergency exit is through the other building? How do you,
I can't, but hopefully our next witness can. No, I think what, you know. our-
it's coming. It's
Yeah,
coming,
no.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else regarding those issues, or is there, continue?
We'll wait to see what your further witnesses bring.
Okay. All right, so you indicated that 133 Valley, neither of the buildings are currently occupied.
Yes.
Right? And do you know what the property at 133 Valley was, what the last use of that property was?
Residential,
Okay.
2-family, if I recall.
I think 2-family.
Okay.
I think Ryan will, mention that in his testimony. Do you have any idea what Mr. Russomanno's intention is regarding the future use of 133 Valley?
I'd say, I think he plans to renovate eventually, but he's got a number of projects he's working on currently. So that's probably at least a number of years down the line for him. And from my understanding, from the, the conversations I've had with him.
But no one knows.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
okay,
it's
understood.
It's his prerogative. At the end of the day.
Okay. All right. Now I'd like to talk with you about the operation of the retail cannabis dispensary. And again, I think from your earlier testimony, you would be the person supervising and managing that location?
Yes.
On behalf of your family's business?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us what the proposed hours of operation are likely to be for
Yeah.
this facility?
Of course. During the weekdays, I'm thinking, what we have planned currently is a 9 to 10. And then we would, on the weekends, 9 to 9. And then weekends, we'd be 9 to 10. If that makes any sense.
Okay. Weekends means Saturday and Sunday?
Saturday, Sunday. No, sorry, Friday, Saturday. Friday, Saturday, 9 to 10. And then the rest of the week, we would do.
All right, so 9 to 9, but the
Yes.
3 additional hours on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Friday and Saturday, not Sunday.
Got
What
it.
are the hours on Sunday?
Same as the weekdays,
Okay.
9 to 9.
Are there any rules around the licensing that limit when you can be open or closed?
There is, actually, the town ordinance specifies, and I want it with me, I believe no later than 11 PM, and I think no earlier than 8, but let me just confirm that. The ordinance provides that no cannabis retailer shall be open to the public between the hours of 11 PM and 8 AM, Monday through Sunday.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Okay, and how many employees do you expect to have?
We'll have a total of 10 employees, and then on staff at any given time, we'll have around 6 working.
Okay, so you expect no more than 6 employees at any,
Yes.
working at any point in time?
Yes.
Okay. And we'll come back to talk about parking in a couple of minutes after I just cover a couple of other things. Can you talk about trash and recycling removal? How will that be handled?
Within the, I believe the site plan, right, there's a, Ryan kind of designed a trash
Enclosure?
Yeah, an enclosure, where we'll have a few bins, a few of them. And then we're gonna have a professional service that comes by as often as needed to pick up the trash.
Okay. So it'll be handled by a private?
Yes, by private service.
Okay. Can you talk about expected deliveries to this location?
Yeah, so primarily how it's done in the industry is that they come early in the morning before operations begin. So, somewhere around like 6, 7 a.m. Usually it's a box truck or a van that does the deliveries. Sometimes they do them later at night after, operations close, but usually it's beforehand, early in the morning.
Okay.
And we'll have probably 2 or 3 deliveries, I'd say, a week, something like that.
Where would those deliveries take place?
We won't be open at the time, and most of the time it's just a van, like a Sprinter van. They'll be able to, I believe they'll be able to pull right in, into our lot, and do deliveries from, back there, or just right in front of the building. There's parking right in front of the building, so street parking, so you can do it then.
And you're going to, just so it's clear,
Yeah.
as I understand it, you're going to coordinate the scheduling of these
Oh, of
deliveries
course.
to make sure that they're done at a time when you're not open for business?
Yes, we have to do it that way. Yeah.
So
100%.
vehicles could either park in front if they can get a parking space,
Mhm.
or pull into the back parking lot.
Exactly.
To make a delivery
Mhm.
and then leave before people are coming and going.
Mm-hmm,
Okay.
exactly.
And will your architect have dimensions of that box truck Sprinter van that we can look at compared to the site plan?
We don't have, it's a basic,
I got that, but I mean,
I-
if it's 8.32 feet wide, can a Sprinter
then
van
they'd have
fit?
to park, then
Can
they're
it
gonna
fit
have to-
there?
Yeah, I
And if
understand.
it can't fit there, is there room on street for it to park? Like, somebody's got to
Understand.
walk through that,
Yeah,
right?
that's a good point. I understand that, yeah. And it may have no choice but to park on the street, candidly, because again, we're restricted,
And you've got a second floor overhang in one of the driveways, and, is the Sprinter van too tall to fit in there?
Understood. And I think, given the narrowness, there's a possibility that they may have to park and load from the street.
So that would be my guess. So then hopefully one of your witnesses can talk about on-street parking there.
Is
What
there
are the
overnight
regulations? Is there a loading zone?
There's no loading zone at least not
Yeah.
nearby.
Is overnight parking permitted there? Do we know?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so. It's a county road.
Yeah. Well, that coincidentally leads us into parking, which is what I plan to discuss next with the witness. So, Jake, the site plan that we've provided the board provides for 4 parking spaces in the rear of the property and 3 on the adjacent property at 133 Valley,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
All right. How do you intend to utilize those parking spaces?
Customers, purely for customers.
Okay, and where do you anticipate your employees will park?
Block or 2, block away, something like that, on street parking. They'd utilize street parking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've had some conversations with Tierney's about possibly renting some spots from them, maybe, just like 3 or 4 of them for employees, but I don't see us necessarily needing that, but.
Is the nearby street parking 2-hour primarily and/or metered?
There are some meters there.
There's some on Valley, but not on William Street, right?
I don't believe any of the parking on Valley is time restricted.
Yeah.
Is there a crosswalk on the side of the street where Tierney's is? I'm trying to sort of
Valley Road?
reconcile the number of parking spots versus employees versus a truck coming twice a week, right, to refill inventory, and the amount of customer traffic that might be required to substantiate the truck coming that often. It seems to point towards either a high amount of foot traffic, as in the local population being your core customer, and/or customers parking across the street where the Quick Check is or where Tierney's is, to your point, which means that folks are then crossing the street. So I'm just thinking in the context of safety.
Well, we're not proposing that people park at
Well,
Quick Check, first of all.
you're not proposing it, but where, where,
Realistically.
yeah, where would they park?
There's no crosswalk currently.
Thank you.
Certainly, it's a county road, and we're happy to support a crosswalk.
If I
Sure.
can, there is a
There is a-
crosswalk
yeah.
at William Street.
Is there? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
I'm fairly familiar with the area, and I'm not so sure that adding 10 employees or 6 employees for all-day parking on Valley Road or the nearby street is going to be not a problem for the people who are already coming and going there. It's not a lot of empty places along that spot.
Well,
But I mean, you're actually citing a plan where you have your employees park on the street all day long, and that's not, sound like the best plan, but maybe.
well, if we can have the employees park on site, in which case the customers will have to, will not have the benefit of on-site parking.
Can we just go back real fast to the 10 employees, 6 at a time working? You're going to be open for 86 hours. I'm having a little difficulty with that math. Can you help me?
No, I can't answer. Yeah.
So, I guess, trying to think of the best way to put it. I mean, so we'll probably, I'd say we have about 3 bud tenders at any given time. We'll have an inventory manager, we'll have a manager, so, yeah, I'd say it's about 6.
But they can only work, I mean, you're talking about 86 hours a week of being open, and each employee is going to work 40 hours plus maybe some overtime. And, the usual rule is you may need 3 employees for every 1 human being that's going to be in when you've got that many hours. So, I mean, I think you're going to have a lot more employees than you're saying, and
But you may have-
it impacts the plan.
Jake,
I mean, I can't necessarily, I mean, we'll obviously no one's going to be, working ridiculous hours. If it's 7, if it's 8 employees, then, that'll be fine. Then we'll do what has to be done. You know what I mean?
I don't know,
But-
that answer went under my head. I mean, the point is, if you think you need 6 employees working,
I'd
You're-
say up to 10. You know what I mean?
up to 10 what?
Up to 10 employees.
You mean at one time?
We're talking
But
about,
if 6 employees are going to be
one day?
working on the premises at one time,
Is that
your
one
total
time?
number of employees is going to be a lot larger than 10.
Do you mean at one time or in one day? Are you saying shifts? Is that what you're talking about? Or
No, I'm hearing at one time.
You
I
think
mean,
at
I've
one
heard that
time?
clearly
That's what I
now.
thought I wanted to
At one time?
Saying one time all the time.
Well, like I said, I mean, I think at any given time, yeah, it will probably be somewhere between 6 and 8. And yeah, we might have some part-time employees as well that help fill in all of that and whatnot.
aren't you limited to the number of employees you can have
Yeah,
for
we
this
can only
particular
have-
license?
For the first year, based on our micro business, we're micro license, and we're only allowed to have 10 total employees for the first year. So
I'm lost.
it might be more like 4, 5. I mean, we're gonna have to we'll make it work.
We'll make it work. I'm lost.
When
And
you say-
I'm angrily lost.
But when you say 10 employees for the year, do you mean you can only hire 10 people? Or does that mean
Means you only hire
at one time, you can only have a total of 10 employees on payroll? Is that what that means?
For the first year, yes, that's
It's only
all
10
we're allowed.
W-2, or is that also 1099s?
Well, as far as I know, it's both.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll also have a security guard on site. He does not count among that because he's an independent contractor.
So 11
Yeah.
employees you can hire. So I think to Mr. Jacobson's point, you couldn't have those, if you needed 10 people working on that site, they can't be there for 12-hour shifts, right? So you couldn't have 10 employees at any one time because you couldn't
The hours
maintain
that
your
you're-
hours.
Yeah, the hours that you're
I
open.
see what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay. So it would be more like 6, or would it be,
At any given time, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
would it ever
That's
be
what I said.
10 at a time?
No. It wouldn't, I mean, it couldn't work that way. That's why I was saying 6.
No, my problem is that they're proposing to be open for 86 hours. They
Yeah.
can only have 10 employees, and they want to have 6, they say that they need 6 at a time in order to have an operation.
The math
But
still
the
doesn't
ma-
work.
the math is not even close.
Right, so if
Yeah.
6 people worked 40 hours, you still have another
Gap.
46 hours to work
And
for
only 2 other.
4 more people.
And people take vacations, and that's, and you're talking, right, so.
And, yeah, and I'm talking
and-
like just, working straight eights.
I'm not convinced, the 1099 versus the W-2, just because you mentioned security guard's an independent contractor, which is a 1099.
Yeah.
So that's the 11, so maybe, are you sure that it's 10 including independent contractors?
Well, it's not. There you go. That's it.
Which means.
What's it? Don't.
Yes.
We're not hiring, we're not having a 1099 order.
Yeah.
It's a firm that we're hiring.
Understood.
Right.
Okay, so it's 10 total, including independent contractors.
No, because independent contractors don't count among our count of employees.
No, the security company is providing a function. If they were to try to skirt, I mean, there's a whole, I mean, they can't hire an employee, call it an independent contractor, and use that to get around the town.
Hours, of course,
Yeah.
right? There's like, if
Right.
they, let's say, had a bartender that was choosing their own hours theoretically, making their own schedule, they could, right, be a contractor, theoretically. But that's not what you're. Okay. So
I'm not trying to hide any balls here. I mean, just to be clear, I mean, the problem is that it's, the plan is not fully baked in my view, because you're saying you can only, I mean, by law, you can only hire 10 people. You're saying that your operation requires you to have probably 6 people on site at all times that you're open. It can't work. You cannot fit 10 people's schedules to work 86 hours. So either you're going to end up with much fewer people on the premises, which leads to security and other concerns, or, I mean, it just doesn't.
Or you've got to shorten your hours.
Or you got to shorten your hours.
So we try to shorten our hours.
Well,
Is there a mandate for 6 people, or are you just suggesting 6 people based on your business plan?
Yeah, based off my business plan and the
Got it.
research I've done into these businesses,
Okay.
that's the preferred.
Got it. And is there a regulation for how many folks have to be on, employees, not folks, employees have to be on the site?
How many, like, I mean, no, there's,
No.
yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it could be,
Okay.
it could be me and, a couple, another guy or two,
Got it. Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. And obviously, we'll meet whatever regulations and laws we have to. We're not gonna be
course.
doing anything ridiculous. I mean, if we have to have 4 employees and we have to have a soft opening for the first year, then that's what we do,
And I get, just again, to refocus, what we're concentrating on or concerned about is the actual number of employees and where they're going to park.
I understand. Well, I know from my own experience, I worked at a BMW dealership throughout college, and I was telling Alan, they had us parked a block or 2 away. So when I was kind of coming up with this plan and trying to figure out parking, I was trying to prioritize customers, So that's kind of where my mindset kind of went, from my own experiences working,
No, that's understood, but there is
Yeah.
a significant difference between, say, 6 or 10 cars taking up William Street,
Residential.
residential street. So we're trying to get a better sense of how the operation would function.
part of the problem we have here, I think I was going to mention this at some point in time. When the town adopted the cannabis ordinances and the zoning regulations, the conditional use requirement is that this facility is only permitted on Valley Road between Walnut and James Street, which is a relatively small area. And if you look at the west side of the street, I don't think there was any contemplation that it could possibly be located there. You've got the 2 strip malls, the Krausers and the CVS, you've got Tierney's, and then I think you've got some commercial and a large residential property on the west side, and that leaves us to the east side. And I can only think of 2 properties on the east side that have any on-site parking. One is, I forget the address, but it was where Moody Day that previously got
151.
condition.
151 Valley.
And then there's another retail sort of strip mall that has parking in the rear. Otherwise, they're limited to these small properties like this. This is what the town town wanted this facility in this area.
I think we're just trying to understand better,
And,
though, the functioning, that's all. I understand, Mr. Chairman.
We didn't pick,
I don't disagree. I think we're just trying to get a better understanding of how it would function so that we can, perhaps either make suggestions or say can't work or can work.
Sure.
But it seems right now we don't really even know how many employees will be there at one time. So we just need more clarity
I
at
think
this point.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're saying that it would be, you would think 6 at one, would be the most at one time?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was
Because
saying.
I'm assuming that there, again, you haven't had any operational experience yet, but I'm assuming that there would be times of day where activity would be greater and require more
Exactly.
employees, and other times where, like the earlier morning hours,
Tuesdays,
for example.
Mondays, we might only have one bud tender on staff, So that's how also I got to those numbers. You have to consider when these businesses are going to be busy. They're busiest at night. They're pretty much dead throughout the mornings and, midday until the evening rush. So,
So why not shorten your hours then?
very well could. I mean,
You need to tell us. Like,
Yeah. Right.
we're trying to help you through this
Yeah.
process, but at the same time, you've got to give us the information
Yeah.
that we're all asking
We need
for.
to understand the parking demand.
Right.
yeah.
At the end of the day.
Mhm.
And that's part of your staffing.
Okay.
Well, maybe we should go into and talk about the parking analysis or study that was done that might alleviate some of these concerns. Have you done any kind of analysis or study regarding the availability of on-street parking in the vicinity of 135 Valley Road?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell the board what it is you did, how you went about doing it, the areas that you surveyed?
Yes. So,
Before you refer to the exhibit, just
Yeah.
talk about what did you do?
So, me and a couple of my family members, we went out and we counted exactly how many spaces were on, as you can see,
Well, they haven't seen this yet, so
Oh, they haven't
let's mark this as an exhibit. I don't know what you're up to, Janice.
This would be A22.
I have sufficient copies.
Are the spaces on Valley Road, are they painted? Are there marked out spaces with individual meters, for example, or just marked out spaces, or is it just curb length that you're able to park at?
Yeah, exactly. Both. There's certain portions of Valley that have metered parking, and certain portions that are painted.
The stretch in front, I guess, between William and James, is it?
Yes.
That
has some metered spots.
That has some metered spots. Do you know the number of metered spots?
I believe it's 5.
5.
Yeah.
Okay.
5 to 6.
Thank you.
All right, so let's talk about the areas that you studied or did parking counts on.
Okay.
Yeah. So you've divided them. This is a chart that you prepared that summarizes the information that you gathered, is that right?
Yes.
You prepared this, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so you've got headings at the top for 4 different locations.
Yes.
Talk about that.
So we took a look at Valley Road, and we divided it in from Walnut to William Street, and then from William Street to James Street. We did 2 separate counts for that, those 2 stretches of Valley Road. We found that there were a total of 18 spots on Valley Road between Walnut and William. And then we found that there was a total of 15 spots on Valley Road between William and James. And as you can see, we went 3 times a day for 2 consecutive weeks, and counted out how many available spots were in each one of those, kind of zones. And that also on William Street from Valley to Day, as you guys can see, and then on Van Vleck from Valley to North Mountain.
So those are the 4 areas
Yes.
that you were counting
Yes.
available parking spaces?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So just, I think you referred to this
Yeah.
briefly, but at the bottom of the page, you have total available spots. Is
Yes.
this your calculation as to how many parking spaces are there?
Yes.
Yeah, that exist that are for legal,
Yes, legal spaces
okay.
that do not include any, loading zones or anything of that.
Yeah,
nature.
you're only counting
Legal
spaces where,
spots.
that people can legally park their car.
Exactly, yes.
Whether meter or unmetered.
Yes.
Right.
And I made sure to verify that with Alan here. He even came with me and we walked the streets, as well as Paul Sionis. He also took a look and verified my count.
So looking at that bottom, the bottom row on this Exhibit A22,
Yes,
the last column has a total of 57. That's the total number
That's
of
the to-
parking spaces
yes, in all 4 areas.
available.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right. So then, go back then, explain, you went and physically counted,
Yes, me
Spaces.
and my a couple of my family members, we went and we counted. We went 3 times a day during, a few different times. We didn't try to make it exactly specific because we wanted to see, how it differed. We went and we would just count exactly how many cars were parked within each area, and that helped us to determine how many free spots were in each one of those areas.
so let's just take a time and just, maybe you can explain
Yeah.
what this shows for the board.
For sure.
For example, Monday, March 11th at 10 a.m.
Yes.
All right, then you've got your 4 columns, and
Yes.
what are those numbers in the columns represent?
So, on Valley Road from Walnut to William, there were 12 free spots. That means there were a total of 6 cars that were parked at that time. So from William to James Street on Valley, we were at 10. We had 10 free parking spots. And then on William Street from Valley to Day, we had 6 available spots. And then on Van Vleck, out of the total of 18 spots that we counted, there were 8 free spots at 10 a.m. on March 11th.
So what were the total number of free spots available in this area at that time?
36 overall, between all 4 areas.
Okay, so looking at your column that's highlighted in blue, which is the total available on-street parking, meaning the total number of spaces that were open and unoccupied and available for people to park at those times.
Yep.
What was the lowest number of available spaces at any time shown on your chart there?
13.
And what day was that?
That was March 16th, Saturday at 10 a.m.
Okay.
316.
Were there any other times where there were, other than that one, where there was less than 20 spaces?
Yeah, there were a few. Looks like,
All three times on that Saturday?
yeah, all 3 times on that Saturday were booked. We're pretty filled up. Besides that, that's pretty
Well,
much.
just run through, anything less than 20?
There's one at the bottom here. April 13th at 11 a.m. There were 16 spots.
That's this past Saturday.
Yeah, this past Saturday. And then it looks like Friday, March 15th at 2 p.m. There were 19 spots available.
Okay.
So that Friday. I believe, was that St. Patrick's Day weekend, right? Is that St. Patrick's Day weekend?
What day?
That was St. Patrick's Day weekend? Okay. Yeah, the 16th, right?
Cheers.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting that there's a correlation between St. Patrick's Day and Tierney's being there?
Hey, I'm not trying to put anything in you guys' minds, but
We figured you'd figure that one out, John.
Can't put that past.
We won't say if your car was parked at that time. Okay. I don't think I have anything more regarding the parking issue. Just a couple of other minor things, really. There's a comment in Janice Talley's memo about suggestion that the driveways and parking areas on both properties to be paved,
Yeah.
and that's going to be done, is that right?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you've got these storage sheds that are in the rear of these properties. You discussed And you're proposing to maintain at least the sides of those sheds rather than remove them. And can you explain why you're not just removing them?
Yeah, I mean, it's the landlord's choice. You know, that's what he wants. I can't convince him otherwise. He believes that helps him with the zoning of those sheds. He says if he took them away, he couldn't rebuild them. So he wants to keep them as is. There's no roof on them already, but yeah.
But you've asked the owner, and he told you he doesn't.
Yeah, no, he
Will
does not want us to remove those sheds. Those got to stay. Unfortunately.
All right,
This is where the township.
I have no further questions at this time.
Members of the board? Question?
Have you thought about demolishing 133 Valley and putting up a parking lot there?
I mean, it's definitely a potential in the future. You know, obviously, we want to get some income coming in and, you know, get the business established before we go ahead and maybe pursue purchasing those properties, which we do eventually want to do. That is in the plans, just maybe in a year or two down the line, you know.
But you don't control those properties,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, but, you know, another thing we're considering with 133 is the, you know, that I know that the mayor was very positive about was a consumption lounge. You know, so we've thought about putting a consumption lounge in 133 to complement the retail business.
Where are those folks going
No,
to park?
not yet.
That's not permitted.
So it's not in the plans
That was in
yet.
the planning.
You probably don't want them
Not
parking
sure
if they're
it's allowed,
consuming.
but-
Yeah.
I think the planning that we get, Charles, was happening in the state, they said that consumption lounges were. Right, I saw that as well, they were headed here.
Just wait. Just wait. Okay. Other questions from the board?
Should we wait to ask about the functioning of the business? Because I'm curious about the need for all those parking spots, how they plan on scheduling people to come and visit the store. Would this be the appropriate time, Chair?
Are you going to have further testimony?
He would be the witness to answer that, yeah.
So how many customers are you anticipating at one time? Do you, this is a compound question, but do you see walk-ins? Do you envision scheduling? How do you see the business functioning?
Kind of a mix of both. You know, a lot of times people will place online orders ahead of coming in to pick up. So we'll definitely have a lot of that, a lot of pickups, online pickups. And then also, yeah, decent amount of walk-ins, but nothing too crazy out of the ordinary. You know, I envision it as being a Montclair retail shop, you know, something that fits in with the landscape, so to speak, and, you know, so.
And the reason why I ask is because if you are planning on doing walk-ins, the parking demand would be greater, right? If it's all scheduled, you would know when your customers are coming and going, and it would ease the parking demand. So that, so I would assume you would anticipate the parking lot being full, and then other customers utilizing street parking. Is that the plan?
Yes, yeah.
And would there be deliveries on the sidewalk?
You mean as in like, so if
Pulling in
customers pull up?
front, if customers pull up, yeah.
Like in-car kind of,
Mhm.
yeah. It's definitely something we're considering. We might have like a parking space, we might have something like, you know, where customers can kind of pull up and, you know, probably in the front of the store, and then we'll have a bud tender that runs out their product to them. Or we've considered doing something in the back with one of the spots similar to that, where customers can pull into
Like
that
a
spot.
5-minute parking thing.
Yeah, like an online order kind of spot, you know what I mean?
Okay.
It's also worth remembering that one of the spots is going to be an EV charging spot, and so if somebody put. Two of the spots?
Two of the spots or one of the spots?
No, one physical EV spot, and so if somebody,
Also the handicap spot.
You cannot do that.
You're kidding.
You cannot do that.
Isn't it the handicap spot? Well,
I saw that, but you can't do that.
That's the
That's
next
not
one.
allowed.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's not allowed. Yeah.
No, for the
That's-
charging it is. The charging station can definitely be the handicap spot.
But you're not allowed to park in a handicap spot for any reason, so only people who are handicapped could get their car charged.
And you handicap driving an EV to use it.
That would be, because you're not allowed to park in a handicap spot at any time unless you have a handicap sticker. So therefore, only people who are handicapped can charge their cars in electric.
Can I suggest a very long cord?
We may be talking about, leave this for the next witness, but in light of some of the comments we got from the engineer and some other considerations, we might be proposing to relocate that ADA parking space.
It would make sense. I read and agreed that it would make sense to relocate it.
Well, but I agree with that, but Hank, but just to be, I mean, so but here's the problem. If the 4 spots consist of an ADA spot, an EV spot, and 2 others, the physical spots, and somebody plugs an EV in and goes about their business, and the handicap spot, as Ms. Willis correctly points out, can only be used by people who have handicap placards, it's 2 spots.
I think perhaps making the EV charger one that works for 2 spots would allow that to not, put it in between them, have only 1 cable, that allows that to not set aside 1 specific spot for an EV charger, while still getting the credit for the EV charger. It's not great.
I mean,
but yeah.
I think the point is that if
Oh, yeah.
if the EV spot if the EV spot ends up not being used by their customers, then the lot is even smaller than what that's all I would say.
And I very much agree, which is why I think putting it in a location where it doesn't block off 1 spot essentially is very beneficial, because I would have no problems pulling into a spot that has access to an EV charger if the one next to it can also access that EV charger.
I think you also, I was just say, I think you also need to take into consideration when people illegally park in that spot, which they will, how are you actually going to tow them? Which is, I think, a legitimate
Which is
concern.
unlikely.
Interesting question.
It's unlikely.
Yeah, can you get a tow truck back there?
But it's also unlikely they're gonna.
You can't, bro.
I wouldn't think so, but maybe the architect can speak to that.
But I would find it unlikely that they would tow, a customer illegally parked in either the handicap or EV spots.
I would think they would want to.
Maybe.
I mean, if they're taking away parking from their customers.
Oh, I was thinking if they were customers in the store.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't think they would tow them
okay.
if they're customers. I'm just thinking if they're not a customer that parks there and walks away.
Good question.
While we're talking about this, it's probably an appropriate time to throw something out to the board that we were going to mention in the course of the next witness's testimony. I mean, we're required to provide an ADA parking space. The only place to put parking on site is in the rear. The problem with that is, Mr. Enriquez pointed out correctly, is that if you've got a vehicle, a handicapped person parks in the handicapped space, they've then got to get to the front of the building to enter the store, which means they've got to go down one of the driveways, which are already narrow with vehicles entering and exiting. What I think would be the best way to resolve that, it would require some assistance from the town, but it's been done in other locations that I'm aware of, is to put the handicap parking space on the street directly in front of the building, and there is a space there. And the town can do that. This board can't. The town would have to adopt an ordinance. They've done that at other properties. Janice, I'm not sure if you're 83 Park Street, Dr. Rotunda's building there
Yeah.
that the zoning board approved. Requires an ordinance, but I think, that would, I think, be the best place, obviously, for a handicap parking space, directly in front of the building. So that handicapped person would not have to deal with the logistics of parking in the rear and then getting down one of the driveways to enter in the front. Also, the added benefit of that is that we could replace the ADA space with 2 8-foot wide parking spaces and pick up an additional parking space in the rear, which would give us a total of 5 in the rear plus the EV, which would essentially be 6. So, something that we thought might make sense.
Of course, you eliminate the loading in front of the building. The loading will have to be shifted down the street. Because the loading at that spot in front of the building is designated handicap. A truck can't pull up there and unload.
Well,
Legally.
we all know how, you know.
Yeah, like they won't park
Delivery
across
trucks, you know, tend to park wherever they can.
Well, we're
park.
indulging the fiction of how people are supposed to adhere all the time.
Well, but we
And
also.
not what they're going to do in reality.
But this is a product that they're going to need security to get it from the truck to the, I mean, this is not something, this isn't just an ordinary delivery.
Right.
So you got to pay a little attention to that, as Mr. Brodock has pointed out time and again.
And a question, you mentioned that those deliveries might be made in the parking lot, so there's no way for the handicap spot, the person to access the building from the rear?
There's no way for it to access the building from the rear.
Then how do they do deliveries? How would they do deliveries in the back?
Well, there's a door there.
Yes.
Right.
But it's got steps and it would be
Oh, I
very
see. So
difficult
it's
to
not-
create a handicap.
It's okay, it's acceptable for deliveries, it's not acceptable for handicap access, I see.
What about customers? Will customers be able to enter from the back?
Non-handicap customers.
Non-handicapped customers?
Any customers.
I don't believe so. According to the way we have our floor plan design now, that would be back of house. So that would be something that only the staff could enter through there.
So when customers park in the back, how do they get to the entrance of the business?
They walk through, you know, we want them walking through the exit, you know, driveway. So they'll walk through that way, which will have signage that really clearly depicts, you know, where to go, and then they'll just walk in through the front door.
And that's
So
all
they're
the
not
way
walking
around?
into oncoming traffic. you know.
That's all the way though around the other building, correct? So they'd have to go, they're parked behind your building, and then they have to walk around the other building?
No, they just walk around our building.
Just around your
On the
building?
north
The
side.
exit's on
Inside.
135.
Okay. Oh, the exit's 135, that's
And-
right. The entrance is 130, that's right. Thank
Are
you.
those signs in this package? Maybe that's a better question for your architect, but you mentioned signs telling people where to walk. Is that in here?
The architect's going to deal with signage. I don't know
Okay.
the answer to that, but he's going to discuss, you know, all of the signage.
Okay.
I have another question then. Your driveway is 8.5 feet wide, right? And you've got
Less
to
than
have
that.
cars coming in or going out. Is there also room enough for a footpath for your customers to walk from one place to the other?
It's really an appropriate question for the next witness.
I'm wondering what the size of that footpath will be. I'll save that for your next witness.
Do we have any other questions of this witness based on his testimony so far? Anyone in the public have any questions for this witness? All right, looks like we're good with
Okay.
this witness.
Next witness, Ryan Robertson.
I guess,
This will be A23.
What is that?
A23.
What is it?
Oh, it's the presentation.
This is a PowerPoint. She's getting that. You were able to address the issue of the connection. You shared this with them. Oh, yeah, right. Forgot about that, yeah. Interesting timing, right? Right. Yeah, so if you're able to address the size of the delivery. So the Sprinter van is only 6 feet wide. Top of the plants that don't pass.
Scratching stuff.
philosophical question.
Okay, we ready? You need to be sworn in.
Please stand up, please. State your name, spell your last name for the record.
Ryan Robertson, Robertson.
I don't know if that mic's on. I don't think it caught you.
Ryan Robertson, Robertson.
Thank you.
And your business address, please.
8 Hillside, Montclair.
You raise your right hand, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Counsel, I'm not regularly here, so just voir dire to his expertise.
Well, I mean, Mr. Robertson has testified before this board on prior occasions, including a month or so ago on the Malign Kronberg property on Lorraine Avenue. And I'm offering him as an expert in the field of architecture.
I will accept.
Okay, Ryan, you prepared the site plan and all the revisions that have been made to the site plan for this application?
That's right.
And you're prepared to review the plans with the board tonight?
Yes.
And you've, as typical for your firm, you've prepared a PowerPoint to assist with the presentation?
That's right.
Right, and we've marked that as, what was the exhibit? Janice?
A23.
A23, okay. And I see the PowerPoint is on the screen, so if you want to review the PowerPoint and utilizing the screen or however you would like to present it.
I think you have to hold it, press and hold the on button.
Test?
Yeah.
Good.
That's good.
Okay, so this is 135 Valley Road. This is the survey of just that property. The next slide will be the survey of the adjacent property. This is lot 44. Lot 43 is the other property to the south here. It's located on an approximately 30-foot by 125-foot rectangular shaped lot, 0.09 acres or 3,739 square feet, located on the east side of Valley Road between Walnut Street and William Street. The lot's improved with a 2.5-story wood frame building, an open metal shed, which is back here with no roof, Janice. An unstriped asphalt parking area extending from the north to the south lot lines and up to the existing middle shed. The building's connected to the vacant building in the adjoining lot to the south via a second-story wood frame breezeway, which Ms. Willis was alluding to. I'll talk about that later. This next slide is the survey. Sorry, Janice, I'm going to minimize this. No, it's just an alert to do something. There we go. Sorry, Janice, is it possible to move this to the side of that so I have something to hold this up? If I could just set this on the table and then move the podium. No, that's fine right there. I just need something to put my, this was touching the feet, so that was my fault, sorry. Thank you. Sorry about that. So this is lot 43, similar size shape, 30-foot by 125-foot rectangular shaped lot, 0.09 acres again, 3,739 square feet. To the south of the subject property, lot 44. Also improved with a 2.5-story wood frame building, open metal shed here, and then a framed garage / shed right here. The building's vacant for I don't know how long, and we believe it was most recently a 2-family dwelling. Here's a street view from the planning report. Image from Google Street View. I'm sorry, maybe this wasn't from the planning report. This might have been my image from Google Street View. Existing building was the longtime home for the offices and storage facility of Tucson Electric. This is 44, and this is 43. I'm sure you're familiarized by now. At the rear, this is lot 44, this is lot 43, and here's the second-story catwalk breezeway. The views from the north and the south driveway. This is to the north of the subject property. This would be our proposed egress drive aisle, and this would be our proposed ingress drive aisle to the south of Lot 44, and here's Lot 43.
Brian, do you want to talk about the connecting piece
Sure.
between the buildings now, or are you going to cover that later? I just thought it would be appropriate, since you had it on the screen,
Yeah.
if you can discuss that.
Yeah, so I was going to talk about when we got to the floor plan, because I think the question was, do we need a second means of egress for our second floor, and we don't. You don't need a second means if you're under 49 occupants. This was built, we have an article that Alan found. I don't have copies of it to submit it as a exhibit, but it was an article describing the history of this property. And this was the original building from the 1800s. This property was built in the 30s, and it was originally a pharmacy, Bogue's Pharmacy or Valley Pharmacy. Sometimes for years it was called that. And various tenants rented the second story. And in, let's see, what year was it? In 1984, one of the owners put this second story breezeway as a way to give a second means of egress for the apartments, which was the one way to meet code back then. So that was the reason for this breezeway. Our plan calls for this to be sealed off completely for security reasons, because that's our back of house, there's merchandise and stuff up here, so that's going to be closed off. That is not needed as a means of egress for the subject property. So-
Is it needed for the 133 Valley?
Well, it doesn't have a use right now.
Right.
If it was an apartment, there would be, windows can be means of egress. There's lots of ways they could solve that, depending on what they choose to build there or do there.
And what's the clearance for that connecting piece?
I scaled it off the elevation. It's not dimension, but it's about 12 feet. And I might as well bring that up. There's a question about a Sprinter van dimensions. So this width is over 8 feet. The Sprinter van is 6.67 feet wide and 9.5 feet tall. And this is 12 feet here.
Does
But,
that include mirrors? Does that include the mirrors?
I don't think that typically includes the mirrors.
So with mirrors,
With mirrors, that would have
Please.
to be, yeah, that might get tight.
right?
I don't know.
Well,
where
but I
can find
mean,
that.
you don't need to imagine it, because if you look at slide 3, which, I mean, in slide 5 has another view. If you look at slide 3, it's got a
GMC truck?
a widest truck going in and a pickup truck coming out. And to Ms. Willis's point about if there's also a pedestrian there,
Where do they go?
it better be Mr. Stretch.
Right.
One at a time.
Well, it doesn't, I mean, but there's no room for a pedestrian and a vehicle. I mean, even if it's a,
It's going to take turns.
Yeah, can't be simultaneous.
Somebody's got to back up. Pedestrian or the vehicle.
And so there's some things to discuss about signage. One thing, as you were talking about this breezeway, I thought maybe that's something we should propose is a 12-foot clearance sign here. That's not shown on the plans, but it's something that I thought after we were talking about that in case we do take deliveries through here. Also, something I'll talk about later is we were exploring the idea of having like a push button and a lit up sign like you would have at a school crossing, so that when someone is, we haven't got to the site plan yet, you can see it better in the site plan, but
Why don't you wait till we get there?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
that deals with the ADA space, too.
Yep, right.
Okay, I got you off track by asking you to discuss the
That's okay.
breezeway there.
All right, we were on this slide. This is just a view of the front yard at 133 Valley. This is existing asphalt, and it was requested that we make this pervious. So you'll see in the site plan and the landscape plan, we're proposing a lawn area and a concrete walk to those steps. Next slide are some images of the rear yards facing east. It's really kind of dark here, but this is the two-story shed with no roof that the property owner won't let us remove, and we plan to remove the front face of this in order to get parking spaces in there. And I have some more close-up images of that, and we'll talk about that more. This is the wood frame shed. That is, the property line goes right here, I think, to the left of that shed. And so now this is lot 43, and this is another open metal, no roof shed. Yeah,
Two metal sheds will stay, but the wooden shed is going to go?
the wood one stays too.
Oh, okay,
You'll see it on 2 slides from now.
okay.
I guess they're calling it, on the site plan, it's called frame garage, not frame shed. So this is just a surrounding area illustration of Lot 44. I've dashed in where Lot 43 is. And here you can see Quick Check to the northwest, Tierney's Tavern to the west. And yeah, we've talked enough about the context. So for the proposal, here's the site plan. We received the conditional use application that was granted on February 26th, 2024. And the proposal is to do an interior renovation of this 2.5-story building at 135. That was originally all the proposal was. And then it expanded to repaving, restriping the existing parking lot at 135. And then it expanded to also include 133, along with some other site improvements. Those site improvements are, here's the grass area I mentioned, right here and here. That'll be lawn area with a granite curb separating the asphalt ingress. And this whole area is proposed to be milled and repaved. We propose on this application no changes to grades or changes to the drainage patterns. We'll talk about that more later. We have 3 landscaped areas. This would be a shaded area by our wood fence right here, and these triangular areas created by the angled parking. This is where a light post would be, and some plantings. There's some plantings here to the north of this open shed, and then all along the east side there's more plantings, and we have a landscape plan towards the end of the presentation, and I can go over those in specific. Here's the angled parking, 2 angled parking spaces, 1 straight pulled-in space. These 3 spaces fit within the existing metal shed, this dotted line representing the panels that we have to remove. And this space, number 7, is the handicap space with the EV charging station in between. This is just kind of a blow-up of the previous slide. You can see the proposed one-way ingress, and the proposed one-way egress. A waiver is required for both of these for the 12-inch widths that's required. We have 8.51 on the south driveway, 8.32 on the north driveway. It's an existing condition. There's no way to widen that at all, so we need to request a variance.
In the
Waiver.
back of the property, behind the parking spaces, how much, I didn't see it in the plan, how much room is there for a car? Because you've got to come in the narrow driveway, then you've got to park, what's the turnaround?
Sure. So right here, we're required 12 feet between this parking stripe and this angled stripe. We're supposed to carry that 12 feet as you go around, and the engineer noticed, I think they scaled the drawing, and they were right, that from this stripe to this corner, we only have 11.6. So that's narrow, but it's not quite like a true obstruction because no one can park in this striped area. So it gets tighter, but I think it's a little different than if it was a building corner or something. And then that's required at angled parking, 12 feet. At back-to-back perpendicular parking like this, it's required, I think, 24?
24.
24, and we've got, the dimension is on there, bear with me, 25.1 feet. So goes from 12, a little bit of a artificial pinch point of 11.6 to 25.1, and then back to the 8.32 feet. We talked about the EV charging station. There's new site lighting proposed. Here's a pole located here, and a pole located here, and a wall-mounted light located here, as well as some lighting in here, which we'll talk about when we see the lighting plan and discuss some of the levels. And as Alan and Jake have talked about, 7 new parking spaces, including the barrier-free parking space here.
Do you want to talk about the barrier-free space now,
Yeah.
comments I made earlier and other possible ways to deal with that you thought of?
Right. Yeah, so one of the requests was to get some spot elevations. We do have some here to talk about ADA accessibility. So at the front, corner, we have, sorry, this is not quite about the ADA space yet, but it's related. We have a spot elevation here and a spot elevation here of 500.35 and 499.94. That means that this access aisle meets ADA code for an accessible path. At the entrance, we have an accessible entrance. So from here to here, we're in accessible space. Inside, we're building accessible, you'll see when we get to the floor plan, we're building accessible bathrooms on the 2 floors. We're also accommodating a way that a wheelchair can get product, because the back of house is kind of a half story up. It's like a 30 inches up or so. So we've got a couple accessibility improvements. This spot elevation and these two right here, when you do the math, it's 500.22 and 498.84. We intended just to mill and repave this exactly as is and not change any of the drainage, but when you do that math, it's like a 16-inch drop. And I've been here, I would never have guessed that's what it is, but that means that this is not compliant as an ADA parking space because the slope can't exceed 2%. However, under the rehab code, let me find that section. There's a 20% rule in the rehab code that you have to bring, get the exact wording. Where a space reconstructed as a primary function space, an accessible path of travel to the space shall be provided up to the point at which the cost of providing accessibility is disproportionate to the cost of the overall project. A cost is disproportionate if it exceeds 20% of the cost of the work. So that means if we've spent 20% of our budget on those other upgrades like the bathrooms and the handicap delivery point of sale, I guess I should say. If this is beyond that, pushes us above that, we don't, by the rehab code, we don't have to make this accessible. But that's still not great. It still seems like Alan said, the best solution would be for an ADA space to be here, because this is compliant as 2 8-foot spaces. So, yeah. Another thing to say about the handicap space, and you'll see when we see the floor plans, I think Mr. Graham got to the bottom of something when there's the few steps here that lead up to this back area that's over 2 feet higher, so it leads to back of house. One thing that would help with handicapped patrons is they can come park here, and if they use an app or call ahead, someone could come give them kind of roadside delivery, and they'll come down these stairs and be right at their passenger window. So that's one way to help with them having to get out if here in a non-compliant slope.
Well, that's only if we were to leave the space where it's shown.
Yep. Yep.
What about the possibility of providing handicap or access to the rear by using the existing rear doorway?
So that would require, if it's, I can't remember if it's, let me find out the exact inches. So you'll see on the floor plan, on the first floor plan, that upper area that I was talking about is 2 foot 4 inches, so 28 inches. This back third or fourth is 28 inches higher than all this, and you need 1 foot of rise for every 1 inch of rise for every 1 foot of rise for every inch of slope. So that means you need a 28-foot ramp, which would just take up the whole parking lot. So there'd be no way to get a ramp back there to access the rear.
Okay.
You could put in a lift though, right?
You could, but then you'd need a landing. You need a landing here that's 5'7" by 5'7". You'd also need the steps that would push that all out here. But you're right, like a mobility lift. Sure. We were talking about the waivers. So for the widths of the driveway, waivers also required for the size of the parking spaces. 9 by 19 feet is required, and we're proposing 9 by 18 feet for all spaces except number 4. Number 4, the access aisle and the very free space are 8 feet wide, but 18 feet long. And the EV charging station and trash and recycling enclosure are located right at the rear here. So here we have the proposed 45-degree angled parking at spaces 6 and 7 with a new steel bollard to protect this step right here. Spaces 1 through 3 are proposed at the location of that existing shed. As I said, the landlord won't allow us to demolish that shed. Planting areas are proposed at the east and south property lines and next to this existing garage. So Janice, here is the frame garage you were asking about. That was in that picture.
Yeah, well, my real concern
Mhm.
is that wall for the shed, the
This one?
southern wall.
You're right.
It blocks any kind of sight distance for somebody backing out of that space number 3. And realistically speaking, do you think anybody's going to park between those shed walls and try and open their door? It doesn't make any sense to me
Right.
that you'd have a sheet metal wall right at the edge of the parking space. There's sight distance concerns and accessibility concerns. So is that, realistically, can that be considered a parking spot?
Well, I think we've been allowed to have an 8-foot wide parking space before. So if those 3 were 8, we would gain 3 feet on the sides with the metal, right? So then there could be a scenario where they could get a little tighter so that the 2 on the outside would open a door. I believe if you had a parking space, a 9-foot by 19 parking space right next to a building, you're still able to open the door. So I think it's just unsightly that it's a metal panel instead of a brick building or something, but it's navigable.
And, well, it also extends several feet beyond the edge of behind the back of that parking space. You're not going to be
Right.
able to, if somebody's getting out of a car on space 5, you're not going to be able to see anything. You could back right into them.
Right.
If your car's coming, you're backing out of that space, you can't see anything. What's the height of that wall?
I believe it's like 7'6".
And
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're backing out, you're not going to start turning your wheel until later. So that's one thing. But I don't know. I think the property owner's concern was he didn't want to lose this existing encroachment into the setback. Maybe he'd be okay with demolishing this. It would be much safer if we demolished this wall to here.
at a minimum.
Yeah. Because the construction, you'll see in the photos, it's just 6x6 pressure-treated posts with these metal panels on it, and we could put a new post wherever we needed to, as long as it preserves whatever the property owner is trying to preserve there. It doesn't have a roof that has to support, so I think we would be open to that if that's a requirement.
And do you have any pictures of what this metal shed looks like? And is it possible, if you'd have to keep it, can you make it look attractive?
Yeah, I have some pictures of it. We can
Okay.
talk. If you have ideas how to make it attractive. Okay. So here's this slide is a calculation of the max disturbance area. The engineer requested this. So here I have a little diagram that shows the footprint of the building areas and the footprint of this metal shed and the footprint of this wood shed, which are not to be disturbed. If everything else was disturbed, it's 798 square feet here, 1,122 square feet here, 444 square feet here, and 177 square feet. And that adds up to if you subtract that from the whole lot area, the whole possible area of disturbance is 4,950 square feet. Next is some images from our zoning chart, which is in the drawings. We can just go over some of these. I'll skip over the ones that we conform. We conform with the permitted uses, the conditional use, accessory use. The lot size is undersized, but it's an existing condition. The impervious surface that's going to be a bit of a discussion here. Not to exceed 80% of the lot. What we're showing is 88.3%. And we'll talk about what we think the existing impervious was versus what we propose in a couple slides from now.
Just before you move on,
Yeah.
Ryan, the 88.3, is that for the combined
Right.
two lots?
That's combined, and I have a breakdown of the two
Okay.
coming up. Maximum height and stories we comply with. The front setback, side and rear setback, we either comply or it's an existing condition that we're not worsening. And we don't comply with size of parking stalls, so that is waiver. Number of parking stalls. So this was, this is a modification of the chart that you have in your drawings because I added some lines below, but as Alan already talked about, we are required 14 spaces, subtract 1 for the EV charging credit, so we're required 13 spaces, and we propose 7. And then down in this line item below, I'm explaining that the adjacent property at 133 Valley is currently vacant. We'll assume the future use is a 2-family dwelling. It's unknown what the bedroom quantity is, so per the New Jersey Administrative Code 5.21-4.14G.4, it dictates what we have to assume the parking demand to be, and it's 2 per dwelling unit. So we would add 4 to that original 13. So the combined parking calculation, if this was a 2-family dwelling unit right now, it would be a 17 spaces required, where we're only providing 7. Or as Alan said, if we move the ADA to the front and we get an extra, then we're providing 8.
Well, then we also get a 1 space credit for the EV space?
Oh, if we made it a double EV charger, maybe we get 2 credits? Is that what you're saying?
Then you get one,
Yeah,
you
one
get
You only get one if it's a
one
double
credit for
charger.
8, so you'd have 8
8 Right,
spaces.
that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is for the parking area and driveway setbacks. I have that broken down. I don't have it on the visual here, but to the east, where our parking space started, to the east property line was 5.1 feet. That complies with the ordinance.
And what is the ordinance requirement, just so we're clear?
4 feet
Okay.
from property lines.
This is for the parking area and driveway setbacks, right?
Right.
Okay.
To the north, we only have 0.9 feet. That's where the parking space 1 is inside that metal shed. To the south, we have 2 feet. And, well, that's the south property line that splits down the middle. And then from the furthest south property line, it's 1.1 feet. And that does not meet. Let's see. Minimum driveway widths we talked about. Building facade signage. So wall signs were allowed 1 square foot of sign area per 1 foot of storefront width. We show 6 square feet on the wall sign in the elevation and an 8-inch letter height, and that complies. Which I'll show you that when we get to that sheet. This is an impervious calculation separated out by lot. You really can't see the line, but it's right down the middle is the property line. And so I'll break down the math here. At lot 44, the total impervious area indicated by these gray boxes is 719, which is 19.2%. So the impervious area of lot 44 to the south is 80.8%. Much less on the subject property to the north. That pervious area is 153. It's just this narrow area here and here. And so the impervious is 3,596 square feet, which is 95.9%. Now, talking about impervious, the engineer report showed an aerial photo of the lot that looks like a grassy area exists, and our calculations showed that the existing lot is 100% impervious, and the engineer respectfully disagreed and shared an image. And I grabbed here additional images from Google Earth from various years here. You can see it goes back to 2001. And I'm sorry, it really doesn't show in here. I'm going to try to zoom in.
The board members also have
Oh, yeah.
individual
Okay.
PowerPoints where they might be able to see it clearer.
Yeah, maybe you can see
more
it clearer on your
the
handout.
screen.
So I'll start with 2001. That's kind of a blurry image. you can see the little red pin is right where the subject property is. It says 135 Valley Road. So the New Year's Eve on 2001, you can't really tell what's going on, but jump ahead to 2010, it looks like there's a lot of grass in the area. Then you jump ahead to 2014 and it doesn't look like there's a lot of grass. The fourth image, 2018, is kind of similar to 14, not a lot of grass, but then you go to 2019 and it looks like a lot. This is telling me this is weeds, this is not a lawn area. 19, the sixth image is a little too blurry. The second to last image, you see a lot of green, which looks like it could be lawn, but then you look at the last photo and it's in April and there's just not a lot of green. So I think it was maybe weeds that were weed whacked. And now if we go to the next page in your handout or the next slide, these are the images, these first two images are those exact areas that you're seeing in the aerial photograph. So the middle image in particular, I just see no definition of the asphalt, that this was ever like a lawn area. I could be wrong, but that's why I thought this was just broken up, dilapidated asphalt that has grown in. Same thing with the image to the left. I don't know if it matters to the application because we can't really add more impervious surfaces than we already are showing. It might make a difference because then it might trigger some stormwater, some engineering. So I'm not sure, but so if it was contingent on approval, we could have a civil engineer study this drainage, but we don't have a calculation of what this is. If it was an existing pervious area, it's just difficult to know. And I think you'll see on the next photo, maybe it's you can jump ahead to 20. It's just, there's piles of bricks and construction material in the exact area that we need to kind of know. That's the exact area you would be seeing this aerial photo to know if that was pervious or not. Okay. Next slide, page 19. So here's the photo of the corner where you can see it's a 6x6 pressure treated post and these metal panels just adhered to it. So there's a question, if we remove the front, how do we keep this sturdy? So I think we need to study it. We need to take a closer look at every individual post, look for rotting, every footing of every post to see if it's sufficient, if there's any shaking. I've been here, I took this photo, I didn't push on it or shake it to see if it was as rickety as it looks. It could be very sturdy, I don't know. But I know in the northeast and the southeast, those corners now will need some sort of reinforcing because you no longer have a rigid structure. You remove one of the walls, something has to be done there. But
so on sheet 19, that first photo is the corner of the shed that's to be preserved.
Yeah, that's the southwest corner.
Oh, well, yes. Well, they're supposed to park it in,
Yeah.
park cars in. Okay, and that's just plywood on the side?
That was just a little bit of plywood. I think the image center bottom is looking a little further down. You see the edge of the plywood. It was, I don't know how many feet of plywood, but it should have been that metal panel.
And in the photo, in the middle, the lower photo in the middle, what's that?
That's looking between the shed you're talking about and the wood garage. So we're standing right at the property line between the two. And so it is a little wavy.
Is it possible to like allow the encroachment even if they get rid of the sheds to like backfill it so that they don't have to keep these sheds?
Well, it's when you demolish a structure.
Yeah, you lose the encroachment.
The encroachment. So
Can we override that?
We can't override.
Is there a certain percentage?
I'll weigh in. So, there's not a clear answer as to what defines how much, and I'll be generic, not to this specific thing. You've all seen driving along the highway or whatever, where they leave one wall up and they tear everything down and they're building new building around that one wall, okay? So if you look in Cox on land use, they kind of define it as a rule of thumb. where you leave up 2 walls and a portion of a roof, or 2 walls and a portion of the foundation, okay? But there is no particular definition that you can say, and the reason for that is because everything's situational. It's like you can have a barn which can be 10,000 square feet and a house which is 5,000 square feet, so the barn is the bigger structure, but the house might be the more important structure, right? If the house burns down, you're going to rebuild it. If the barn burns down, you're not going to let them rebuild it, okay? So you can't just measure it on size or square footage or 1 wall or 2 walls or 3 walls, okay? So it's squishy, and there's just not a clean answer to it. But the rule of thumb is, 2 walls, a foundation, and a little bit of a roof. I don't know where the landlord, got his legal advice from, however it is that he's opining that's the case.
Say it's really ugly. And there's no roof. Is there a foundation to this shed?
I doubt it. I think I climbed on some of this rubble and peeked over, and I have a bad ankle. I shouldn't have been doing it, but I did, and I saw kind of semi-regular posts, which I think is just going to be, like now it would be sonotube footings or something, but I don't know what they have there. It might just be posts in the ground, poured concrete into the hole. I doubt there's a foundation. It looked like asphalt, the floor, but there's a lot of junk behind there too. It's hard to know.
Yeah, we'd recommend some kind of additional study on that, because you're gonna have pedestrian traffic going through there, car doors bumping into it. It's a concern.
Yeah. I could see it falling right on top of the car.
Well,
And that may help pin down to exactly whether the landlord should continue being concerned about preserving something, or whether or not there is anything to be preserved. Because if there's no foundation, like I said, is it any more than a glorified fence at this point?
And, in order to preserve your non-conforming status, you had to be conforming at some point in time. So, I don't know, is there a permit for getting this shed put in, going back in time? It may not even be a non-conforming structure. The definition of non-conforming means at some point it was legitimate, right? It was permitted, it was conforming, and currently it's not. That's completely different from something which was put up without a permit and is not legal.
Or does it mean that it just wasn't prohibited? As
Right,
opposed
no.
to being permitted?
Right, so
Which is a little different.
typically with the concept of a non-conforming structure is it was permitted when it was built, okay? So you go back to before you had zone code, and you could build right up to the right of way, Then you introduce a zone code and say you have to have a 30-foot front yard setback, okay? So the structure was legal at the time that it was built, and it became non-conforming due to, the creation of a zoning code or the up code of a zoning code. So one of the questions right out of the gate, again, looking at that structure, is whether the individual actually got his permits to build it way back in the day anyhow.
I have another question for you, and that is that my understanding, maybe I'm incorrect, is that if a structure is non-conforming, that it must be in continuous use, so that you don't, if it's no longer been used as a shed for this period of time, then the non-conforming use disappears. Is that correct or incorrect?
Okay.
It's been abandoned.
So the concept, like you said, now generally, I don't ever recall dealing with a shed per se. We deal with a restaurant that closes and goes out of business, and then 2 years later, somebody comes along and wants to open it up as a restaurant again. Was the use abandoned or not? Okay, and in that type of scenario, said no, it's always been a restaurant. They were out of business, but they didn't mean to abandon the use. Or conversely, a gas station which closed, had the tanks pulled from the ground. It's not coming back as a gas station, so in that case, the use was abandoned. Okay, so. Again, the details with the shed are beyond us, but to extrapolate, sure. If it hasn't been used as a shed for a certain number of years, that use may have run.
The shed has no roof.
It's no longer a shed.
Is it a shed?
Does it have a door? I don't know.
So, yes, I think.
It's not a building.
Clearly, we need more.
Because there's no roof, it's not a
More
building.
information.
I think he may
On
be
this,
preserving
and
something he has
what's
not.
actually there, besides these 4 walls that are in really questionable condition.
And if it's no longer a shed, then
Yeah,
is
I
it,
would
in
think-
fact,
Or even
I
a
would
viable
think
fence.
It's not a roof, it's not a
Right.
building.
then the non-conforming uses
And without,
disappear.
if it's not a building, it can't be a shed. It's just a structure.
Okay.
I didn't take philosophy in college.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna keep going on this slide. The last photo to the right is, if you look really closely up here, you'll see there's kind of I'm blanking on the word. The water is pouring off of the roof here, and you'll see on the elevation we are proposing a roof leader here, because right now it just comes off. At, like,
What side of the building is that? Is that
that's
the north?
the north side.
The north
Scupper
side.
is the word I was thinking of. That's like a scupper on the flat roof on the north. So if you look at the north elevation, Janice, on sheet 24, thank you. That's the only roof leader we're proposing. There's no roof leaders on the building, but that one is just pouring out. So we propose to bring the rain down, and there's no underground system to
So-
tie into, and there's no splash block, so it's just
So
painting.
it's just going to go across the driveway where the pedestrians are going to be walking to the entrance?
It's pointing to the east, yeah.
So when the snow melts on the hot roof from the sun and there's cold asphalt, it's going to hit, the water's going to hit that cold asphalt and refreeze, and everyone's supposed to walk across that.
Well, it's going to stay close to the building because we're aiming it there. Right now, it just goes everywhere. Right
So it's
now,
not going to
just-
form like an icy kind of puddle?
Will it form an icy puddle? Well, it's on the north, so it's, yeah, it's kind
Yeah.
of hard to get sunlight there.
That's a safety issue.
Yeah, but can you channel it?
Yeah.
So it's not crossing, can you channel it somehow?
Channel it,
Can you run into the curb line?
Yeah, so
run it
that,
to the curb. Well, the slope is going the other way.
then
Just
you
go
got to
the
run it
rear.
out to that shed.
It all goes back to the shed.
The shed will now be underground.
Become a war.
There you go.
Thank you.
Just looking at the site plan on page 9, where we're proposing that is quite a distance from the rear corner. I was just trying to think if there's a way to dump the water in front of space 4 or something, but I don't think so. I think it's a substandard existing condition, and we're slightly improving it. We're doing our best to give it a downspout. Unless there's a way, if we're milling and repaving, maybe there's a way to bring it out to the street and go under the sidewalk,
There
possibly.
you
It depends
go.
what the slopes are. Yeah,
That would be the easiest thing.
yeah. I just don't know what that elevation is.
Yeah. In either case, could you just revise the site plan to illustrate where that discharge point is, that roof leader? Because it's clearly not shown.
Yeah. Okay,
You could also angle the leader so it gets closer. I don't know.
to the front, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at some point, the side of the north side becomes storefront that wraps around the corner, so it only goes so far.
Yeah.
Janice, I get logged out. I don't know your password.
Oh,
Sorry. Thank you. Slide 20, we already kind of looked at this. This is just showing that area that's questionable if it's pervious or impervious. There you can get a good look at the east face of that shed that we plan to remove. You see the gable of the wood-framed garage. And then to the far right of that first image is the other metal shed, which you can see more clearly in the second photo. Now we're at the floor plans. Next slide. So here, I know there were some engineering comments about utilities. There's going to be there's a 100 amp service right now that's being upgraded to 200. We don't anticipate any need more than that. There's no change in use, so there should be adequate plumbing, electric, and gas for a cannabis retail shop. Here's the basement level. There was a Bilco door that we're closing up and just making this stair to go up to the first floor. There's a utility room and then an unexcavated area here. As you go up on the first floor, I'll walk you through the front entry. Here's a display area, an ADA compliant entry. This would be a security stop where you would come in and there'd be someone stationed here to check ID and control, occupancy. As you come in here, we have display cases shown. We have a barrier-free washroom. And then you wrap around here and you either go up to the second floor or you go up a couple, 4 risers to this level here. So this level here was that 28 inches higher that I was talking about. We have stairs down to the basement, or from the fulfillment area, the back of house area, stairs up to the second floor. The idea is people will come in, visit with the bud tender, and select their product and maybe order. And then up top is where they call it fulfillment. They'll pick up their order. So there's kind of service windows there. And we're proposing a pneumatic tube system that you can see kind of where there's an existing chimney that would bring product either down into the employee area in the basement or up to the second floor fulfillment area, which is the storage room. And then we have this area here dedicated for handicap fulfillment. So someone in a wheelchair can't get up these steps to get their product, so someone could man this window and it would drop product down to a lower level so that they can access it from this lower counter. Second story. So the second floor is all cannabis retail, including display and shopping areas, fulfillment and pickup as well. Barrier-free washroom in the northeast corner. And here's the existing breezeway. We're proposing to shut that off completely because it opens right into their stock area. And then there's a private stair to the attic. And we propose a new AC unit on the roof behind this existing parapet. So this roof, on this roof plan, is pitched east towards the building. And so in this bottom right corner of the roof, that's where that scupper's happening. And then it's high here. So where I actually show this AC unit should come east a little bit, come down, because you'll see in my diagram, the visibility diagram of that unit.
Would you be able to tell me the total, I guess, retail area?
Yes.
Floor area?
So the first floor is all retail, and it's 1,091 square feet. Second floor is also all retail, 1,120. So that's 2,211.
And with this micro license, or whatever the particular license is called, are there any square footage limitations on the size of the facilities?
I'm not aware of that. I don't know.
2,500.
2,500.
Of retail space?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and here on the attic, we have 250 square feet for a podcast studio and an office that's private. Next slide is the elevations. These are all improvements being made right now by the landlord. It's not really part of the scope, except for the signage and the lighting, and maybe helping with selecting paint colors, but it's an existing shingle roof, wood shingle and wood clapboard siding. Stucco siding is kind of a mix of things, and a brick bulkhead under the storefront.
I'm sorry, can we just pause for a moment?
Yes.
Just to make sure I'm being a good student here. There's no issue with a micro dispensary operating a business that's not necessarily related to the core of a micro dispensary? So we have a,
For the office?
we have a podcast studio. It's not a business? Got it, it's just, okay, got it. Thank you for clarifying.
So here we're calling for 3 gooseneck lights to externally illuminate the signage. This is a good slide to talk about. One of the engineer's comments was we had a sign that said exit only, and I show it on the site plan, show it right here. So you would see it as you're traveling south on Valley, and the engineer makes a good point that people traveling north need to see that too. So we're open for suggestions on how to do that. One idea is to get permission to have a pole-mounted sign that's in the right-of-way, so it'd be on the sidewalk somewhere. Or another idea we had is to have maybe double-sided blade sign here that says exit only, so someone driving either direction could tell, don't pull into this driveway, and there could be an enter double-sided blade sign there. That's just one idea for how to improve the navigability, because it might get confusing. We're gonna have painted arrows and all that stuff, but it's hard for someone driving fast to know what to do unless they're familiar. So here's the south side, and this is cutting through that breezeway that we're sealing off. Another gooseneck light at the rear, at that stoop. On the rear elevation here, here's the step. Here is our trash enclosure, and the one gooseneck light over that door, the 3 gooseneck lights over the storefront. We already talked about the downspouts. Next, page 25 is a diagram showing visibility of the rooftop unit. So this is an approximation of the roof slope that we're seeing behind the parapet and where we would propose some sort of AC unit. And how I've drawn it, a 3-foot high unit, a couple inches off the high point, would project 6 inches above. And then from the front view, taking that angle, you'd have to go 355 feet to catch the eye level of someone's eyes at 5 foot. So I think it's pretty non-visible. But if it was a condition of approval, we could add some sort of screening here that's 6 inches taller than the parapet, or however tall the unit ends up being. Here's the lighting plan. One of the engineer comments was if we could do 3,000 Kelvin instead of 4,000 Kelvin. And I spoke with the lighting designer we worked with on this morning, and he said, yes, we can do that. He'll have to revise his numbers here. It will actually reduce the numbers a little bit, which helps us because we have some hot spots where it's higher than allowed. We're only allowed to be 0.3 foot candles at the property line, and to the south we're in good shape. I think to the east we're in good shape. To the north we're in good shape up until like here. So right where the wall mounted light hits. So one idea was we can talk to the designer to add a shield to maybe drop those numbers. These lights are already set at 50% on a control and on a dimmer, but maybe it can be dimmed more. And then he also is showing 2 lights in the driveways, but those are causing too much light at the property line. So we're gonna ask him to maybe do a greater quantity of lights at a lower elevation, do something different. He should be able to get it. He said it was difficult, but I think he can get it. So I think with the combination with the shield and with the quantity of lights in the drive aisles, we should be able to comply. And this is just showing the proposed, well, a typical EV charging station. This is the trash and recycling enclosure we propose. Here's the gooseneck lights, the wall mounted and pole mounted, so they're the same look. It'd just be the wall mounted one here. And then these are the ones in the driveway, but we should change those, that spec. This is a signage master plan, so we have a wall-mounted tenant business sign. There's 30 square feet max. We're proposing it on the west elevation, 8 foot 4 inches above the ground, mounted in bolts, the tenant name, and wall-mounted downlights. We have a building identification sign that would be reverse cut vinyl behind the glass of the entry doors, 4 inches high, that would say 135. Then we've got a couple traffic signs that are in this chart. Maybe there'll be more, depending on what the board thinks. So one of them says entrance only. I'll show that on the site plan, so we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, our directional signs have a maximum height of 3 feet, so I don't think you can do that as a projecting sign. We don't, without a variance.
Oh, the ones in the, that I was talking about in the front?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're ground mounted, maximum size 3 feet, so that if you wanted to proceed with that, that would be a variance.
Okay. Or could we do a request to have a pole-mounted sign right here in the right-of-way?
That would come from the
You need
township.
the county, or
It's also
Or
a
the
county road.
The county.
It's a county road. Okay, so right now where I'm showing it is right here. And that only helps people traveling south, like I said.
Yeah.
But the other place in this chart was calling for the entrance-only sign to be mounted here so that people don't accidentally exit out here. This was the do not enter sign that we need to find a better spot for, a better orientation for. And then there's the electric vehicle charging station sign, which would be located here. And accessible parking sign in the same spot.
And someone can turn left or right as they're exiting, right? Or are we expecting it to be like a right turn only?
You could turn left or right, I think. Yeah. I don't see any reason to limit it, do you, Alan?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, page 28 is the landscape plan. So here you see in green the lawn area we're proposing and a new concrete walk that leads to the existing stoop. Granite curb separating the lawn area from the newly paved asphalt. Here we have quantity of 9 summer suites, which is this image here. So there'd be 9 there. I guess they're shade tolerant because this is a 6-foot high fence, wood fence here. And I didn't mention the fence on the other site plan, sorry. We're also proposing a wood fence here, 6-foot high wood fence up to this point. We have 4 shamrock inkberries. That's this image in the middle, and that's located right here to the north of the southerly metal shed. And then we have 20 Brody Eastern red cedars, which are here. They help screen this east area. So the Eastern red cedars grow to 12 feet to 15 feet. Full sun, partial shade. They're evergreens. The shamrock inkberries are also full sun, partial shade. They grow to 4 feet to 5 feet. And the summer sweets go to 4 feet to 6 feet. Right there. Oh, and it's not colored. Sorry, there's these ones here, but then there's 2 more of the summer sweets right here and here. And that's the last slide.
Were the plans, did you present these plans to the Historic Preservation Commission?
Yes.
And what was the reaction or comments from HPC?
They approved. There wasn't much scope. We didn't do anything to the outside, so.
Okay, they had no comments or recommendations? I don't believe so from my recollection, just wanted you to get that on the record.
Yeah.
Okay, no further questions.
Oh, I have a question. Could you now tell us, you said you would let us know about the footpath and for pedestrians who have parked in the back parking lot and have to go to the entrance, how you were fitting a footpath and where it was going to be?
So we don't propose a separate footpath. There's only an 8.3 foot wide drive aisle. So pedestrians will walk on the drive aisle. And one idea we had for ADA safety was to maybe have the push button that I talked about of like a school crossing. So maybe you hit a push button and it lights something that could maybe be mounted to the wood fence or mounted to the building that's, you've seen them before. It shows a pedestrian walking and it illuminates and it flashes. That would let someone leaving know that something's going on and to slow down before they come around the corner. However, I don't know how you turn that on when someone's coming out of the store. Probably need 2 push buttons, but we don't.
That's for all people, right? Not just,
Yeah, it'd be for all people, right. So it probably shouldn't be located right there. It should be located at the corner. But we don't propose a separate footpath.
You don't have
room.
Have you actually driven a car on those driveways, in or out?
I have not. No, just walked it.
Carefully, I imagine.
Yeah.
Well,
it doesn't make
you have to
sense.
drive it
It's a
very
benefit.
carefully.
I think that truck has been there every time.
We do have some concerns that maneuver to turn to the egress driveways.
Oh, right. So I forgot to mention that. We don't have a civil engineer on this project, but after seeing your comment, we reached out to Petrie Engineering to ask them to help us with the turning template. They were working on it, and they had technical difficulties today, so they couldn't submit it, but they're willing to do it for us and submit that, the turning templates. But I took a look and made something myself, but I would trust the engineer instead. But
Maybe they can also help with the drainage?
yeah,
Not only the turning template, but also the very issue of the width. Because I've just taken a look at a couple of things, just by Googling various car widths, and it looks like that the width of those driveways is going to be such that really it's only going to be practical for compact cars. You've got somebody with a full-size SUV like a Ford Explorer, you're going to have like 6 inches on each side. Once you take into account the mirrors sticking out from the side, it's going to be really narrow.
I could make a joke about the customer base, but I won't.
It's going to be really narrow, and there's a lot of potential for
I was looking at
problems there.
I was looking at charts when I was preparing for this, and it showed the history of the widths of American cars. And in 2013, the average width of a car was 5 foot 8 inches. And in 2023, it's grown a full foot by 6 foot 8 inches.
And that's because we're switching over more to SUVs,
Right.
away from sedans.
Right.
And that's without mirrors too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never know if they're measuring in the
They
mirrors.
will be without mirrors.
Good point.
This diagram makes it look like they are measuring to mirrors, but I don't know for sure.
That would be helpful to know.
Yeah.
And you've got that picture up very timely. You have those nice little meters hanging out from the wall, taking up precious inches, where you've only got 6 inches to spare, that's a significant
I think it's on the
encroachment.
adjacent building,
Right,
And
exactly. You can't do anything about it. That's,
but it's not in the 8'3",
it's in, those stick out into that, according to the,
well,
looking at the plans, those meters would stick into that 8-foot.
well, it shows that that building is 2.93 feet from the property line, so. So there's a little, I know you don't
But
see it
is-
from the photo, but in terms of the survey,
Hold on. But is the 8-foot width from the property line, or is it between the buildings?
Yeah, page 10, you can see it clearly on page 10.
That you show on the diagram? To me,
Yeah.
it looked like it was from the building.
Janice is right, it's 2'3" to our property line, to the corner of the building. So you're seeing my shaded asphalt is stopping
To
at
the
the property
property
line, but it goes
Okay.
another 2 feet.
right.
All right, well, that helps.
Could you tell me the length of the building from front to back?
Front to back, length, 1 second. About 54'7".
Okay. Have you considered, or the possibility of having a back entrance to the building for people who have parked in the back parking lot?
Yeah, we did, but I talked about it earlier, there's these steps, is there a picture of the steps?
That was for handicapped. You said that handicapped people would not be able to negotiate the steps.
That's right.
But had you considered for your customer base, which
customers.
is parking in the back parking lot, and has to make it 54 feet before a car is coming into the front of them, or coming down the same path they're traveling on, had you considered the possibility of letting people who park in the back parking lot come in a back entrance?
Right, yeah, so one of the first decisions we made to get the most use out of the parking lot was to remove the Bilco door. So that is located right here. Removing the Bilco door cuts off access to the basement. So we had to extend the stairs from the basement to this landing that I'm pointing at right here. So doing that made this a back of house area that we can't be letting people into. We can't be letting people up these steps into this secured stairwell, essentially. So that was an early decision that kind of dictated the rest of the way. And it's a very, like Alan said, it's a very narrow lot, so the building is very narrow. And to have the stair the way we're doing it, it's like a double, not a switchback. It's like this goes down and this goes up.
That's the stair to the basement, right?
Yeah, stair to the
couldn't-
basement is at the top landing.
But couldn't you change the stair so it wraps around? Instead of it going, in one swoop from the first to the second, you can have a landing in the middle and then you go back down, and that would give you more room to
You're
have a
saying
rear
so?
entrance.
So from here have a landing in the basement?
Well, you do it you go down, I don't know
It
the
would
correct
encroach in some
terms.
into the sales area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you would reconfigure the stairs, and then you could secure that side piece so that it becomes like an alleyway through, so that you
Yeah.
could, from the back door straight in.
I could study the head heights too. I mean, if there's any way to shift this first riser just a little bit, maybe there could be a door at the top. But I think that's only 2'5". Let me see what that dimension is. It's tight, but maybe we could look at that. But we didn't explore that too far. We decided pretty early on the back of house was here.
But I think you'd eliminate a lot of the concerns that we've heard tonight from the board members if you could do that, so that people didn't have to walk down those narrow driveways.
But then the only person that's going in is the handicapped people.
Well, and that means that you got to get that handicap space put on the street.
Yes, yes.
Or have that delivery option definitely available.
Yeah. And with respect to putting the handicap space on the street, I would note there are specific criteria that needs to be met in order to qualify for that. And one of them is that you cannot have access to a driveway or off-street parking spaces. So, there may be a hardship exemption that may, be given, but, and it's also a county road, so they may have other requirements that.
So are you saying it does not meet the hardship exemption because they have parking in the back?
By the town ordinance, yes. That is one of the requirements that need to be met in order to be eligible for an on-street parking space.
I don't think, I respectfully disagree, because I've had this issue before. I mean, there's two state statutes that apply to handicap parking. One is a general statute that says municipality, or maybe in this case the county, can basically designate one anywhere just by
Mr.
ordinance.
Tremblay, is your microphone on?
Sorry.
Want to make sure we're picking it up.
There's a separate statute that provides for the ability to create a handicap parking space in front of a residence, and that has particular criteria that have to be met. And the town has a specific ordinance that's kind of patterned after that state statute. But there's, again, that's one state statute. The other state statute generally allows for a municipality or I believe a county to create a handicap space in any location by ordinance. I've had this issue, discussed it with Paul Barrett relating to the property at 83 Park Street, because the initial response that came, I don't think it was from you, but through Steve Wood at the time, was that, well, the ordinance says you can only do it if you meet these
Right.
requirements, which is true if you're looking to create a space in front of your house.
I don't know if
I
don't know if it specifically
provide you with that
states for residents or just in general, but I'm just speaking to the township ordinance specifically.
No, we can, I can provide you with
Yeah.
the information.
Either way, I think, again, more information is needed to see whether or not it's possible.
Right.
And then even if it's possible, there's no guarantee that the county will approve it. But it's something that
Janice, I don't know
would
the
need to be
answer. Does the
explored.
county have to approve the handicap space if it's on the county road?
I don't know the answer to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I would assume that they
I would
would.
imagine I do. I mean, any changes you make to their
everything else on the
road,
county
whether it's a
road.
sign or
I would
crosswalk.
assume that you
I
have.
assume
Yeah.
so, we just have her.
Yeah, I don't know what their process would be, but yes, I'd imagine they want some kind of say.
All right, so you've timed out again, Janice, on the computer. I don't know whether you need it any further. Have you given any consideration to, since we're creating two theoretically more active driveways too with this, about pedestrian warnings and that sort of thing? I mean, we have, with other buildings in town, provided some sort of systems to give pedestrians notice that there might be cars crossing over the sidewalk with a little bit of regularity.
Right.
And particularly on the north side of the building where the sight lines are non-existent.
Yeah, I wish there was room to fit a stop sign. I did put a paint stop line in the asphalt, you can see on page 10, so that to stop someone before they hit the sidewalk, so they stop kind of twice.
What we've actually required in similar situations is a light that gets activated when a car is exiting the driveway, and the light would be in the sidewalk.
By sensor?
That'll flash.
Yeah, a
So
sensor.
the pedestrians see it.
So that pedestrians know that a car is coming.
Okay.
So it would be an in-sidewalk notification.
Would we also consider paint or some sort of visual recognition, my God, need dinner, visual signal for the customers that are walking? So there's one thing for the motorists, there's nothing for the customers, right? Just to make sure that they're not walking within this 8 feet, like all over the place, if we need some sort of way to like, direct the traffic.
Although there's really not enough room, a lot of room for them to
Yeah,
wander
they
around.
basically.
Hug the building.
You know, like
the
bikes
building,
and cars
basically.
share the
We do have a
road,
glass
pedestrians
corner,
and cars
Mr.
share
Campbell.
the
We do have a glass
driveway.
corner at the storefront, so as you're coming out the front and heading north,
Yeah.
you look through the storefront, you look through the side front, and you'll see car coming, so it's a little more safe. You know.
That's only
Yeah.
if the
It-
windows stay transparent.
Yeah, that's true.
Any other questions from the board of this witness? Any questions from the public? Mr. Tremulek?
Can I have a couple of minutes to talk to my client, Mr. Chair? Thank you.
We'll take a 5-minute break.
Wait, okay, good.
Okay, we're back on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Discuss this with my clients and our experts. I think what we'd like to do is to carry this application, give us an opportunity. You know, we think we've got answers to this, but I think rather than do it in a hurried fashion without considering all the different ramifications, we'd like to postpone this and then come back to you with plan revisions that will hopefully address all of the concerns that the board and its experts have raised, and try to tie this up in a better plan.
I think that's appropriate, so thank you.
How about
So-
May 20th?
Is that the earliest you have?
I already have applications scheduled for April 29th and May 6th, so that's the first one available is May 20th.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, and no further notice will be given unless you figure out that you need another variance in the course of looking at this information, then I think you have to.
We're hoping to go the opposite direction.
Okay.
So,
All right.
All
We'll
right.
see you on the 20th.
Thanks for your time. Thanks.
Gotta get used to it. Okay. Next on our list is, our agenda this evening is a referral from the council in Lackawanna.
Yes, as you know, the council reintroduced the Lackawanna Plaza redevelopment plan. We talked about it at the last planning board meeting, and subsequent to that meeting, I sent information to the three board members who had not participated in the history, and left it at that. So the deadline for the planning board to make its comments, I believe, is May 10th.
And we have one meeting already scheduled between now and then?
Yeah, you have the meeting on April 20, get my agenda here, April 29th. We have an application that should not take a lot of time, and we can also talk about this at that meeting. I think at the 29th, we'll be hearing 130 Grove Street. They evidently, it's the self-storage building.
Mhm.
They came to an agreement. They have an agreement with New Jersey Transit.
Oh, did they?
So we're going to focus on
Mirably did you.
that application again that evening. And we can also finalize the discussion on Lackawanna Plaza. So if anybody,
Well, I'm going to make the following
Go
suggestion,
ahead.
which people can take or leave. So I think maybe the most efficient way to deal with this that gives full opportunities to our new colleagues would be to establish a subcommittee consisting of them and me. And the reason I say that is because Carmel had the main drafting pen, but I had the backup lead drafting pen on that. And so what I would think is,
And you have the history of what the board.
and I have the history of what the
discussion
board
was.
discussion was. And so, we can talk offline, we can exchange drafts, any comments that you have, any questions you have, any comments you have, and then what we can do is, if there's edits you want to propose, we can consider doing that. If there's things that you just fundamentally don't agree with, we can make a list of those things and make a subcommittee report where you can, I'll shut up. You believe me, I actually can do it when push comes to shove. But then we can have a discussion about the items where, you looked at the report and the old report and said, that just doesn't do it for me or us. And then that way we don't have to take time tonight because I don't think anybody wants to do it tonight. But I think that might make sense. And if Counselor Terry doesn't want to participate for whatever reason, he doesn't have to.
well, just one question. We have, if it's a subcommittee, it's 4 members. of this subcommittee, that doesn't create a quorum issue?
How many people on that subcommittee now?
Well, so it means that
It would be
it would be three new members plus me, and
So
if,
that
and
would-
So
and the
it's
other
a
thing.
meeting of 4 people. I just want to make sure we don't have a quorum issue if there's
Roger.
4 planning board members meeting.
If it's 4 meeting, we're okay.
It's 4.
You have 9 as your usual.
but he's already
Right.
said
Board members,
Right.
So then 5 would be the board.
Okay, so you're good. Just want to make sure, then that's fine.
And the other thing, I mean, it may be 4, but I don't know whether, we don't know whether Counselor Terry's going to want to participate. If he does, it'll be 4. If he doesn't, it'll be 3.
Okay,
Just to be clear, we have 9 regular members and 2 alternates, is that?
right, 2
okay.
alternates.
And according to our bylaws, 5 is a quorum.
Good.
Yeah, so we'll have 4, and that way we can get together, and yeah, any questions that I don't know, I know where to find out. And that way, you know, I think we can figure out a way to very efficiently present any new views that the new members have, and then I can make a list and we can air them
And then we can have that discussion at that next meeting.
On the record.
And we
That
can,
makes sense.
yeah, and then we can,
That works for me. We'll meet at Tierney's.
I think that's,
where there's parking, apparently, on Van Vleck. All we got to do is make sure we can park on that, like, 15-degree grade, and we'll be fine. But
Just pull the emergency brake, it's fine.
So that's what I think we ought to do in order to most efficiently deal with a report that we should, even if we have a collective view about what is likely to happen to the report, we ought to do our thing.
I would wholeheartedly second that. Yeah.
Do we have any comments from the council in regard to the report? Is there any comment that they have made at all?
only what they did at the meeting, and if you want to go back and play that tape, I guess.
No, I mean, they are, I mean, I don't mean this, I don't mean this cynically. I mean, in other words, they made a rational decision to address the conflict allegations that have been made by starting the process over again. That unfortunately puts us in a position of having to do work, but the beauty of it is we have new members, and our new members have new opinions, and so we ought to do the thing, and it'll go where it goes. And I mean, you know, I think there's several different possible outcomes, and I'd be surprised if it's the same outcome with new members, that's one message to the council. If it's a different outcome with new members, it's a message to the council. I mean, I think really, if we do this the right way, it should speak. And what happens when it speaks is not we don't have any control over that. But it's not about, it's not about that.
necessarily
It's
about
not,
right.
it's not about, in other words, at one level, there's does it comport with the master plan? Sure. And I don't disagree with you. I mean, you know, if you think in a world in which you think it does, and you articulate your views, it might change the vote. But separate from the question of whether at a high level, you know, does it conform with the master plan, yes or no? Our recommendations were, I thought, thoughtful, and if I do say so myself as one of the authors, but I mean, I thought they were thoughtful, and I thought the council should have given them more consideration than they did.
And we were inclusive, too, of varying opinions.
Right.
Because we didn't 100% agree on every point.
And I think it's going to be better with your input. I mean, you know, any report that can harmonize me and Brother Neiman, man, was...
There was some distance, but...
And thank you for suggesting it
Yeah.
and taking on the responsibility.
Jeff, are you going to reach out, to everybody, including Counselor Terry, or do you want me to?
Do me a favor, put us all in contact, just to make sure I'm using the right contact information,
Absolutely, yes.
and then I'll take it from there.
the latest email
Thank you,
addresses
Janice,
today,
and
so
then
I'll take
I'll
care
take
of
it from
that.
there, and if we, you know, if we...
There were components in our report which we requested more information, the board requested more information, which it seems that they were not eager to serve up.
Correct. There were, we asked information of the developer, and that was at a time when there was, you know, they were here and talking about it. That they're not coming back. So we're stuck with the information.
So there's a scenario where we're going to give more information.
Well, I mean, the subcommittee can talk about our deliberations with the planner, and the planner can reach out and see if they answer the question. But I would not hold your breath, but we can ask.
That it's happening.
Correct, because
I can make myself available and try and answer whatever questions you may have.
It's the questions you couldn't answer the last time that we asked
They
of the
may have-
developer.
I
She
may
can
ha-
ask them again.
I may have some additional
But you may
information
not-
because
don't
my
expect to get
files
a-
are voluminous.
A different response, since we kind of went
No,
twice
we'll
already,
ask if
know.
we'll ask if you know the answer, great. If
Exactly.
you don't, you'll ask, and they'll either tell
And
us
then
or they
And
won't.
then it remains an open issue that, you know.
I think it'd be good for the record if we show that we did
Referral provided, yeah.
But
Hey, maybe we might be surprised.
Yeah, but I mean, all we can do is
Yeah.
our jobs. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody's got to stay in their lane. We've got a lane. Let's do it.
At the end of the
And
day, it's a recommendation.
Right,
right.
exactly.
But I mean, you're right that if you had a view that it comports with the master plan and the majority didn't, yes, that wouldn't change anything. But that doesn't mean there wouldn't be material alterations to the report. And the fact that you have that view would be meaningful to the council as well in overall considering what to do with our reports. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you can have an impact on this, win, lose, or draw.
Thank you.
Well said. Yeah.
Very good.
So this is on the agenda for the next meeting, which is when? You said.
It's in 2 weeks, it's the 26th.
So the packet's going to have a copy of whatever we did.
I mean, the
last
29th, I'm sorry.
week. And then we'll talk about the rest of it at the meeting.
So I have, and I think I gave to Janice the Word version, or what I thought was, I mean, it might not have been the final, but it was awfully darn close. And so I've got something that we can use
Right.
to edit whatever it is that the subcommittee comes up with. And so what I would think we can do is, it may not be perfect, Carol, but it'll be close. I think we can generate a red line of whatever the subcommittee wants to think about changing based on the input of our new members. And
For the rest of the board to review.
for the rest of the board review. And I, it's not my intention to change anything that I did before. I'm going to just be a scrivener for the new people. And then,
So I'll reach out to everybody tomorrow, and we'll try and schedule a meeting for next week,
yeah,
early in the week.
yes.
Okay.
And I think if we had to, we also have May 6th as a meeting, so it's right after
Yeah.
the April 29th meeting. We could slide
I mean,
in some additional
Fine.
comments, but
I'm pretty efficient. I mean, I think we'll figure out a way to.
And thank
Yep.
you, by the way. Thank you very much.
Because it came up as an agenda item, out of an abundance of caution, I just want to make sure to do this. I want to take this opportunity to disclose that a nonprofit organization that employs my wife receives an in-kind donation from BDP Holdings. Immediately upon becoming aware of this, I consulted with board counsel. In consultation with board counsel, I'm confident I can be fair and impartial on the application and see no reason to recuse myself, but did want to make sure to disclose, as I did the last time this matter was before the board.
In query whether you or me are going to get to vote anyway. But
Yeah, open question, but out of abundance of caution, wanted to make sure, so, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We don't have any committee reports. And do we have bills?
No bills.
I didn't
Do
see
I
bills.
get the
Bills?
privilege, having spoken, of moving for adjournment? I move adjournment.
Second.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
It's been fun. It's been real.